Chivalry didn't win medieval wars, physics did. Armor glittered, banners sang, and then a small piece of steel hit the right spot with ugly math and ended a bloodline. The winners were the people who turned fear into leverage, momentum, and pressure. Knights paid fortunes to be invulnerable. Weaponsmiths answered with tools that made invulnerable a loud lie. Ready to walk the line where romance dies and engineering wins? Keep your visor down, what's coming hits hard. Medieval battlefields were ecosystems of problem solving. Every defense invited a counter, every counter forced a redesign. The real protagonists were the makers and the drill masters who taught ordinary hands to do extraordinary damage. We'll keep the showmanship, cut the myths, and stick to what's well attested. When the sources get shaky, I'll say so. If that ruins a favorite poster, blame the evidence, not the era. Start with the Warhammer, the neatest answer to plate armor. Wealthy fighters trusted tempered steel shells, swords skated off and arrows lost heart. Then the hammer arrived, small-faced, fast, and brutal. Most heads were compact, a kilo or two, because speed kills. The trick wasn't mass, it was geometry. A tiny impact face, a levered haft, and a beak on the reverse. The blow didn't need to pierce, it just needed to move skulls inside helmets and break rivets. At Agincourt 1415, French nobles bogged down in mud, and English Welsh hammers did the ugly finish. Armor mattered, but concentrated force on smart targets mattered more. Hammers weren't prestigious, they were efficient. Anyone with a solid stance could learn to deliver decisive angles, making the battlefield feel less like poetry and more like shop class with consequences. But if the hammer was a clean, predictable solution, the next weapon was its chaotic opposite. We now enter the territory of contested history, where art and reality start to fight. If the hammer is arithmetic, the chain flail is chaos and a caveat. The iconic spiked ball on a chain is mostly art. Widespread battlefield use is disputed. Adapted threshing flails, Hussite Bohemia, are real, but the classic Morning Star on a chain wasn't meta. Still, flexible heads are mean in tight quarters. They slip around shields and punish rigid guards. They also punish bad timing, as novices often hit themselves. Why pick it? When mastered, a chained head gives whip-like acceleration and trick angles that make shield walls flinch. The downsides are self-injury, friendly fire, and slow recoveries. That's why safer poles, not chains, were kings. The flail earns its cameo as a nightmare that forced sergeants to teach timing and restraint. If you like the sound of a chain but also like your cheekbones, there was a smarter way to ruin armor. We now move from a weapon of chaos to one of brutal, organized simplicity, the infantry's answer to the knight. Enter the Godendag, good day in Flemish, which is exactly what it made for, foot soldiers, and a very bad day for cavalry. Think heavy club with a stout spike at the end, details vary. At Courtrai, 1302, the Battle of the Golden Spurs Flemish militias fought on chosen ground, laced with ditches. They used polearms, including Godendags, in dense ranks to stop charges, drag riders down, and break the illusion that a horse equals a win. Chroniclers loved the piles of spurs. What mattered more was doctrine. Hold ground, fix the charge, finish the fall. Did every fighter brace a spike and skewer a warhorse? Sometimes, probably. The point is simpler. Cheap wooden shafts with iron ends multiplied a city's strength for a fraction of nightly cost. Units could be raised, drilled, and armed in weeks, not years. The lesson spread fast. Organized infantry with the right sticks could cancel centuries of mounted prestige. If you think that ends the cavalry era, hold that thought. The arms race simply moved a few meters forward and added hooks. The Godendag was a simple tool, but it belonged to a much larger, more versatile family of weapons. Polearms are the medieval Swiss army category, halberds for chop and hook, poleaxes for armored duels, and the raven's beak, the bec de Corbin for pure anti-plate malice. Picture a downward curved spike, the beak, a hammer on the other side, and a thrusting spike on top, all on a shaft long enough to keep you alive. The physics is clear. A long lever amplifies your strike. A small point concentrates it. Hit visor slits, elbows, armpits, or simply deform a plate until the person inside stops being a problem. Manuals and surviving heads show how deliberate this was. The beak hooks, the hammer stuns, the top spike finishes a stumble. Infantry learned combination drills: beak to pull, knee to buckle, top spike to thrust. Against horses, the beak drags, the shaft bars. It's not glamorous, it works. And it's exactly why armorers kept thickening plates only to face longer beaks next season. The poleaxe, a close cousin, was the gentleman's problem solver in the lists. But now we must take the opposite design mood and meet the weapon that turned brute force shock into a paycheck. Remember, the poleaxe in the lists, an armored gentleman's problem solver with axe, hammer, and spike. In the crush of men-at-arms, it was common and respected. Now, take the opposite design mood and meet the Zweihänder, the German two-hander, late 15th to early 16th century, not high medieval. Most battlefield examples run 3-6 kilos, 5-6 feet long, with a long grip and often a ricasso, an unsharpened section you can half-sword. Some sport parrying hooks. It's not a door saw, it's a formation tool. Landsknecht Doppelsoldner double-pay men carried these and earned extra for stepping into ugly spaces. Their job wasn't theatrical lumberjacking, it was disruption. You strike at pike heads to shove them aside, smash the rhythm of a hedge of spear points, and open a seam for your mates. Baikoka 1522 sits in this late world of pikes and guns, where the big swords had a role on flanks and in breaches. Nobody sliced forests of ash like butter. They made people flinch and lines bend, which is how lines break. And because fear pays, the silhouette mattered. A man walking with a 6-foot blade makes troops blink. Parade Zweihänders grew absurd. Battlefield ones stayed practical. Training focused on momentum management, big cuts into guarded recoveries, half-swording for close control. If your favorite image is hero chops 20 pikes, archive it next to dragons. The real picture is meaner and smarter. Capture sometimes paid better than killing. Enter the man-catcher a pole with a hinged, toothed collar at the end. Slide it around a neck or limb. Close, twist, yank. It restrains more than it shreds. This tool is better documented with city watches and guards than with open-field line fighting. But the economics are real. A live noble equals ransom, and ransom funds wars. That's why some helmets get higher collars, and why anyone waving a man-catcher sat high on hit lists. In a melee, teams matter. 1 pins, 2 shield, 3 dogpile the prize. In streets and sieges, the man-catcher is gold. You control someone at a distance without spraying blood. As firearms spread, versions persisted in policing because nothing else replaced the grab from beyond arm's reach niche. It's not common on battlefields. It's crucial in the gray zones between battle and law. From a tool of careful restraint, we now return to pure, uncomplicated brutality. This next weapon is often confused with its flanged cousin, the mace, but it served a slightly different, spikier purpose. Now to the Morning Star, the spiked cousin of the mace. Don't confuse them. The mace has flanges. The Morning Star has spikes. Fix the head to the shaft, no chain, keep weight sensible for repeat blows, and aim for edges. Spikes don't need to pierce full plate to matter. They bite into curves, catch on mail, dent hard enough to transmit shock, and turn glancing hits into anchors for the next strike. Mounted versions tend shorter, foot versions go longer to carve space. Training still counts. You drill shoulder endurance, hand changes, and the discipline to strike and reset. Medieval art loves the silhouette because fear is part of the payload. Line a few at the front and watch confidence cool. Archaeology shows puncture clusters and depressed fractures consistent with spiked heads. Keep the claim tight. Heavy, simple, effective, especially in cramped fights. The Morning Star was a blunt instrument, but this principle of a multi-purpose head was perfected in the polearm family. Let's return to the Raven's Beak and its specialized adaptive design. Back to precision cruelty, the Bec de Corbin and its family. The Raven's Beak earns its name every time a visor screams. Italian smiths leaned to long, narrow beaks to challenge fine Milanese plate. French heads sometimes broadened the hammer face. Eastern forms loved extra tines for yanking reins. The shared idea is modular lethality thrust, hook, crush, without swapping tools. If you're counting democratization, this is it. A pole and trained hands embarrasses a fortune on horseback. If distance is the problem, the Middle Ages offered two broad answers: bow-like devices and gravity machines. Torsion engines like the ballista and the lighter Scorpio are ancient and did appear in some medieval contexts, mostly in sieges, but they weren't the everyday stars. When walls needed cracking, all eyes turned to the trebuchet. Torsion engines like the ballista and Scorpio are ancient and did appear in some medieval contexts, mostly sieges, but they weren't the stars of the later Middle Ages. Arbalests, powerful crossbows, and springalds handled a lot of the precise hurt. When walls needed cracking, all eyes turned to the trebuchet. Keep the torsion romance modest. Rates of fire were careful, crews were specialized, and the real terror was often psychological, the flat bolt you never saw. What torsion did superbly was pick a man and erase him. Good crews could work quickly by preset ranges, but we're not talking modern machine gun speeds. We're talking patient, accurate, morale-splitting shots at officers, gunners, and anyone foolish enough to stand tall on a battlement. Dozens of such shots in a watch can feel like a curse. The fine print is simple. Even when numbers are small, precision rearranges behavior, people duck, and confidence leaks. But while torsion engines sniped at individuals, another machine was designed to challenge the very concept of stone walls. We now look at the crowned king of siege engines, the counterweight trebuchet. Now for the crowned engine, the counterweight trebuchet. No torsion, just gravity and a sling. Load a big weight on the short arm, a stone in the sling on the long arm, release the lock, and let physics roar. Ranges of a few hundred meters were plausible with heavy stones. Rate of fire was slow but relentless. Crews became choreographed teams tuning sling length, release pins, and counterweight fills like luthiers tuning a lute made of oak and terror. Trebuchets didn't just batter. They negotiated. The sight of frames rising outside your walls started negotiations. Ammunition was usually stone, but creativity, sometimes sickening, happened. Messages, burning bundles, even carcasses for shock. The famous story of plague bodies hurled at Kaffa 1347 is debated, whether or not it seeded the Black Death. It shows besiegers understood morale as much as masonry. No wall felt eternal once the sling started singing. So let's pull back from the siege lines and look at the patterns. Across all these weapons, from the smallest hammer to the largest engine, one theme repeats: specialization and the importance of drill. Notice the pattern: specialization without fragility. Hammers answer hard shells, beaks answer joints, poles answer horses, big swords answer dense hedges, grabs answer wallets, engines answer distance and stone. Behind each is drill. None of these tools are just swing. Even the simplest club gets better with footwork and team choreography. Knights trained for years, townsmen trained for months in pole drills and made nobility blink. That is the democracy of medieval violence. Skill scaled better than title. Let's clean up a few myths. The classic chain flail is cool and contested. Most warhammers were nimble, not sledgehammers. Zweihanders didn't mow pikes like wheat, they shoved and opened seams. Mancatchers shined in policing, not as mainline battlefield kit. Ballista-style engines weren't machine guns, they were deliberate and situational. Kaffa's catapulted corpses make a great story. The epidemiology is argued. If a claim sounds too cinematic, it probably needs a footnote. Why does this matter? Because accuracy makes the savage parts more impressive. When you see a compact hammer dent, a master-crafted helmet, that's not barbarism, it's craftsmanship beating craftsmanship. When a militia line holds with cheap poles, that's civic discipline, rewriting aristocratic math. When a trebuchet topples an ego carved in stone, that's physics reminding politics who pays the final invoice. Now, picture the field. A charge starts. Stakes and mud slow it. Poles bite. Men fall. Hammers and daggers harvest the gaps. A banner rallies. A second line with long steel disrupts the press. On the wall, a scorpion crew takes a captain's hat off. A counterweight groans. A tower coughs dust. A beak hooks a visor. A knee buckles. A life ends in thuds. None of this is random. It's planned brutality built from solvable problems. This planned brutality never stood still. The entire period was a constant, evolving arms race between the people making the armor and the people making the tools to break it. And it kept changing. Armorers chased every new threat with another ridge or hinge. Smiths answered with narrower points and smarter angles. Cities wrote ordinances to drill militias. Lords hired mercenaries who trained to split pikes. Engineers traded notes about sling knots. The Middle Ages were not a pause between geniuses. They were a workshop that never closed. If you want one takeaway, take this. Medieval war wasn't a costume drama overwhelmed by honor. It was a moving laboratory where ideas lived or died by whether they broke something today. The winners had dirt on their boots and math in their wrists. The losers wrote pretty poems. And when a pretty poem mentions a raven's beak deceiving a knight, believe the beak. If that rewired the way you picture medieval fights, hit subscribe and tap the bell so the next volley doesn't miss you. Drop hit or myth in the comments and I'll share a clean, source-backed quick sheet ranking each weapon's evidence level, typical weight, training load, and real role on the field. Next episode, we settle a favorite bar fight. Poleaxe versus Halberd, who really owned the 15th century? Don't blink. The first strike decides everything.